Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are joining us from in the world. And over the course of the 2 days of our conference this year, 1,000 members and institute partners, colleagues and friends are joining us from Africa, Asia, Australasia, Europe, and the Americas. As Chief Executive of the Chartered Banker Institute, it's my very great pleasure and privilege to welcome you all to day 2 of our annual Banking Conference 2023. Our theme this year is responsible banking, and in particular, how socially purposeful professional banking can both embrace and help shape digital transformation and sustainability in the age of AI, artificial intelligence. And our session this morning, or this afternoon, or this evening, depending on where you are, builds on yesterday's topic, led by Dame Susan Rice, former chair of the Chartered Banker Professional Standards Board, and then a wonderful panel chaired by our good friend and Institute past president, Bill McCall, who looked at responsible banking in the context of the past, the present, and an exciting AI-enabled future, and what technical and professional skills a responsible banker, a chartered banker, needs to remain relevant in the age of AI. So as we always try to do at the Institute, sort of learning lessons from the past, but applying them to banking today and applying them to help us think about and shape the future of banking. Today focuses on the future of learning in banking in particular, including how we and other academic and professional educators can help our members and bankers more generally to develop their knowledge and ability to apply the latest tools and techniques of digital finance and AI in their roles, and especially for the benefit of their customers and communities. Our panel discussion later will be chaired by my colleague Tanya Retter, our relatively new, still just 6 months into the job, Executive Director of Learning at the Chartered Banker Institute. You'll also witness the world premiere of an example of our own immersive learning by way of showcasing how the world of education, just as much as the world of banking, is being disrupted by the adoption of new technology, tools, and techniques. Before that, though, first we're going to hear from Dr. Victor Dorfler, Senior Lecturer in Information and Knowledge Management at the University of Strathclyde and author of What Every Chief Executive Should Know About AI, which is a bit of a problem for me, because I'm delighted to welcome Victor, of course, a genuine world expert in the field, but I'm a bit worried because as Institute Chief Executive, I was asked to introduce the theme and topics for today, and what this chief executive knows about AI, then Victor can probably cover in less than 10 seconds. So to let me avoid trying to talk about that directly, but maybe sharing a few wider thoughts on the fourth industrial revolution, as this age of AI is sometimes termed. Although, to be honest, I'm still a little unsure as to where the second and third ones went, and the role it might play in shaping the banking profession of tomorrow. I mean, clearly the opportunities that AI and other technologies present, because I know there's a lot of technologies are sometimes described as AI, but aren't really that. They're just developments of other digital finance or digital technologies. I think the opportunities for streamlining processes and reducing costs, alongside identifying better service solutions for customers, does suggest positive outcomes both for banks in terms of sort of efficiencies and costs, and consumers in terms of better service. However, change can bring challenges, and a healthy level of professional skepticism and critical thinking will be essential if we are to successfully leverage the value of technology without diluting customer relationships, good customer outcomes, and trust in the banking profession. And just from a UK context, that's even more important now, given the introduction of the new Consumer Duty, which introduces new requirements around making sure we can demonstrate and deliver positive outcomes for customers. But I know that's the same sort of around the world. The professional skills will be required to ensure bankers remain curious and inquiring. For instance, questioning the aggregation of data being used to power new technologies, considering where the data has been sourced, where it comes from, how it's been gathered and analyzed, how we can be sure there's no unintended bias built in, as there often is if that data comes from the human world. It means stress testing new technologies for threats, so we're not simply chasing the next big thing without being thoughtful about the risks and the potential downsides that come from it. it means ensuring that new technologies are developed from the outset as inclusive and built for all. I think that then implies the need to apply critical thinking to the true potential of what new technologies may be able to offer. For instance, what is the true potential of AI? Are we having enough meaningful conversations about what's right to do rather than what's possible to do? Can machines really think for themselves, or are we just talking about automated processes based on sets of parameters and pre-programmed information, that come from the human world? It's such a rapidly developing area. It's one that we and all bankers need to keep very much at the front of mind when we consider deploying any new technology. And the key to all of this, I think, is simply to remember that technology is not by itself good or bad. It's how it's deployed, how it's used that matters. Will it drive positive outcomes for customers and communities in a broader sense of people and planet, or will it harm them? And these are the kinds of questions that responsible bankers need to be asking themselves, the kind of questions that being a chartered banker will help equip you to investigate and answer. Developing the technical and professional knowledge and skills of Institute members so that you are equipped with the background, with the questions, so you have the professional skepticism and judgment, is perhaps now more important than ever to ensure we have the necessary competence and confidence to leverage the power of technology. That's our role as educators at the Chartered Banker Institute, and therefore one of the key themes for today, or day 2 of the banking conference, and one of the key themes that we at the Institute will be working on over the next 12 months and beyond. So I'm now delighted to hand over to Dr. Doerfler. I mentioned Victor's recent book, What Every CEO Should Know About AI, earlier. What I didn't share was he's been thinking about, researching and teaching in this area, not just AI, but the wider area of organizational and professional learning, and how to support communities of practice like ours at the Chartered Banker Institute for more than 20 years in Europe, the USA, and the UK. Victor is also, and I hope I'm not breaching any confidence or academic regulations here, the PhD supervisor to my colleague and managing director of the Chartered Banker Institute, Giles Cuthbert, who many will know. So we're very grateful to Victor not only for joining us this morning, but for looking after Giles so well over the past 3 years too. So colleagues, welcome to day 2 of our annual banking conference. Welcome, Victor. It's over to you.
Thank you very much, Simon. It is great to be here. The CEO should know about AI. You are perfectly right that you should not know anything about the technical details. But there are a lot of things that I think are very useful for a CEO to know. And this is very much along those additional challenges that you said that appear in the world of education, where we talk about knowledge and learning in terms of human and AI. And this is what I would like to talk a little bit about today. This is obviously based on my book, which can, by the way, be downloaded for free until Friday this week from the publisher. And what I want to tell you a little bit about first is why I think I am the right person to talk about this, and then a little bit about knowledge and learning in terms of AI and human. So I have 25 years experience in the field, and this is a dual sort of experience. So as a practitioner, I was building AI systems for 25 years. I was leading software development, running implementations, and mainly supporting C-level executives with AI. On the other side, as a scholar, I was studying how people know and learn and such. And therefore, I conducted, for example, interviews with 20 top scientists in the world, 17 of them who had a Nobel Prize. And based on this, I kind of developed an idea about what it is that CEOs should know about AI. The prompt for that was when I attended the New Scientist Live event in 2017, and at that event, Demis Hassab is the founder and CEO of DeepMind, and now the AI chief of Google, talked about DeepMind and about AlphaGo. And he made assertions such as DeepMind learns the same way as people do, and that AlphaGo demonstrated creativity and intuition. So I wanted to clarify where these differences are. To do that, the first thing is to go back to what is AI. So how AI was defined. And the definition of AI was loosely that it is a machine that can deliver a performance that humans would deliver through thinking. And this definition does not say anything about whether it is delivered through thinking or by any other means. And then the first thing that I think is useful, let's think about our thinking and compare it to how it works in the machine. So how our knowledge is different from the knowledge representation or whatever form of processes that are done in computerized systems. So what is very important is that if we build some sort of knowledge representation, some types of AI work with knowledge representations, in that case, obviously we can only put in what we can formulate in an explicit way. Now, this is an incredible limitation because there was a philosopher called Michael Polanyi who basically developed almost all what we know in the 20th century about knowledge. And he made an incredibly important assertion and provided substantial evidence for that. And it was that explicit knowledge cannot exist on its own. In human minds, any knowledge is either tacit or it is rooted in tacit, because any explicit knowledge has to be understood tacitly and applied tacitly. Now, this means that any explicit knowledge that we can put into computers will be incredibly partial and will lack something incredibly important. This is just the immediate knowing process. We can look at the processes of knowing in a slightly more extended way. For example, you can wonder at the beauty of a rainbow while you still know that it is just a prism effect, how the white light breaks into components and so on. And even if you know that, that knowledge will not prevent you from being able to wonder of the beauty of the rainbow. We can tell jokes. Why? Because we are able to change logical levels, so abstraction levels. And the most important thing where actually anyone in the computer world agrees about, that the common sense is something that we did not manage to work out at all. And this is actually the longest running AI project of the history. It is still running since 1986. They are trying to build a model of the common sense, and so far there is absolutely no useful outcome. So I wonder about the financing of this kind of approach. Now, the next important thing is that even if we would do something about knowledge, knowledge does not work in a standalone way. So it is connected with many other of our faculties. So it is connected to feelings, such as feeling hunger or being scared. It is also connected to our emotions, such as love or hate. And obviously, it is very important here to make this distinction between feelings and emotions, because the same way as knowledge can override feelings, the emotions can override knowledge. And we also can adhere to certain values, meaning that we can, for example, transcend our self-interest for the interest of the organization or a group or people or family or whatever else we hold particularly important in our selves. And this is about knowing. So what we can say about knowing, that there is some that we can replicate in computers, but it is a tiny bit of our knowledge. In that tiny bit, computers can deliver better performance, as we have seen that in chess and then Go, and more recently with protein folding and all sorts of other applications, where simply humanly it would be impossible to produce the number of combinations that would be useful. The most recent one was, for example, to use the minerals that can be found on Mars to synthesize something that would be useful to produce oxygen or to have any form of life. This would have taken humans hundreds of years to achieve. Now, the next is in terms of learning. So the learning that is used in artificial neural networks is what we call reinforcement learning. What that means, it means that if I want to teach you something, I just give you an input. If I like your response to that input, then I reward you. If I don't like it, I punish you. As you are learning, you will deliver always the outcome that I am happy with. Now, this is an approach in psychology from the beginning of the last century, and I very often call it the dark ages of psychology, because it means that we had a discipline that studies the mind, while at the same time denies the existence of studying the mind, labeling it a black box, and reduces the study to the inputs and outputs. Now, obviously, this is a very useful thing and works very well in terms of AI and also in terms of humans. So if a child touches the hot stove, they will very quickly figure out that it is a bad idea and they will not do it again. However, there are many other ways how humans learn. So first of all, we can be inspired and we can like some teachers, for example, and therefore pursue their subjects or whatever they are delivering, because we are curious about it, because we are interested about it, because we develop a passion for that learning process. We are also talented for some things and not talented for other things. Of course, one of the responses that an AI person who believes in a thinking machine would deliver to that would be that, of course, because AI is talented for everything, or it is not talented for anything. It is not about whether it is talented for everything or anything. The point is that we do have these special features that we occasionally learn with a great ease in some fields, and it feels almost like play. And at the same time, we are not learning that easily in some other areas. And most importantly, I am a great advocate of the grandmaster apprentice relationships, and I believe that these are incredibly useful, especially because there now seems to be substantial evidence that this is the only way to achieve the grandmaster level of knowledge, which is kind of the highest level of knowledge. And this deep knowledge, this highest level of mastery, is incredibly useful as we are developing our world. You know, you don't need a huge number of grandmasters, but you need a few very much. And based on this, what we need to figure out in our learning organizations, so in our organizations, our banks as well, where we value knowledge, is how to balance three things. So we have these grandmaster apprentice relationships, which are working fantastically well, and they are essential for the development of high levels of mastery. We have communities of practice where the peer learning happens in collaborative ways through the phenomenon which I call thinking together, and we have AI. Now, the point is that AI is a fantastic thing if we figure out how to use it well. The problem is that AI is an amplifier. It amplifies everything. If you are smart, it will amplify that. If you are stupid, it will amplify that as well. So the task of the learning organization today is to balance these three things: the communities of practice, the grandmaster apprentice relationships, and AI. Thank you. That's all what I wanted to share with you today. And there is a small message that I want to finish with, and it is that I hope that all the viewers will enjoy the conference, and what I am sure will be a fascinating discussion that follows now around the future of learning. Before handing it over to Tanja Retter, who is chairing today's panel and the proceedings, there will now be a short video on immersive learning provided by Edify. Thank you very much.
Our world faces a triple planetary crisis of climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. Financing Solutions requires the urgent training of banking professionals worldwide on sustainability and responsible banking practices. The Principles for Responsible Banking Academy recognizes that climate change and other sustainability challenges are global issues, requiring innovative, collective, and collaborative solutions. To build upon the success of its first year, the Academy will revolutionize mainstream professional development with its immersive PRB Academy. Our collaborative virtual learning hub can be accessed via Edify. Edify is an immersive education, training, and collaboration platform. You'll be able to experience making real-world decisions without the limits of the physical world. Foster real-time collaboration through digital avatars. Accelerate learning and skills acquisition through visualization and lifelike simulations. The Immersive PRB Academy hosts a suite of inspiring virtual spaces, as well as incorporating traditional teaching content. Begin in the Academy's control room to access multimedia content. Break out into the contemplative auditorium to collaborate or consolidate. Learn about the Paris Agreement, Sustainable Development Goals, and other policies in our UN Strategy Room. In our data room, engage with the direct and indirect drivers of climate change and make data-driven strategic decisions collaboratively. Explore sustainable finance data, apply responsible banking strategies, and manipulate the future to see the impact of the decisions you make today. Experience firsthand the devastation caused by the triple planetary crisis. Be immersed in alternate future scenarios resulting from your strategic choices. Move to the Planetary Impact Boardroom to apply responsible banking principles while looking back at Earth. Experiment with interactive climate change simulation tools to explore sustainable finance strategies. Engage via desktop or in virtual reality. Alternatively, join a broadcast from a tablet or mobile device. Wherever you are, whichever device, you can explore the Principles for Responsible Banking solo, or together with banking peers from all over the globe. Learn and apply the Principles for Responsible Banking without limits.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll come back to what we've just seen in a moment, but I'd like to extend a big thank you, firstly, to Victor, a fascinating introduction to our session this morning. And hello, a very warm welcome to everyone who's joined us either this morning or this afternoon, depending on your whereabouts in the world from wherever you're zoomed in from. Let me introduce myself to start with. I'm Tanja Retter, and as Simon explained earlier on, I'm the Executive Director of Education for the Institute. I've been privileged to be working alongside the team since May, when I joined following a varied career in banking, latterly working across digital transformation, capability and capacity building, which links really strongly into the work that I now do at the Institute, where our purpose is to enhance and sustain socially purposeful, responsible professional banking. And we do this by developing and supporting bankers' education and professional development throughout their careers, paying particular support to core banking skills, professional ethics, culture and conduct, digital finance, green and sustainable finance, sustainable development goals aligned with the UN's Principles for Responsible Banking, and of course, bank management and leadership. Now, as I reflect back across my career over the last 25 years, the industry and therefore the skills, knowledge, and ultimately behaviours we expect our bankers to possess, they've changed and they're still changing at exponential rates. Alongside this, all industries are experiencing challenge in attracting, retaining and growing talent. So as we face into these societal challenges and consider how professional bodies, as well as organisations and bankers themselves, adapt and lean into the new and emerging learning technologies, I'm honoured today to be chairing the panel, which will be discussing the acceleration of learning in the age of learning, responsible banking and developing of capability. The future of learning with continuing emerging technologies powered by AI, as we've just heard Victor describe, alongside that critical interaction between digital and sustainability in banking, will be the focus of our discussion today across the panel. And we're going to explore how responsible banking can be integrated into the learning process in the flow of work, and how it can help develop the capability of bankers, not just for today, but also for the future. To kick us off then, let me come across to our panel and let me ask them to introduce themselves. Firstly, good morning, Ihab. Can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, Tanya, for the introduction, and thank you so much for the conference that I believe that comes in time. My name is Ihab Shalabi. I'm a researcher in economics of sustainable development, a consultant. I'm consulting a lot of banks in the MENA region. I'm also a board member of Vodafone Foundation in Egypt. And I have long-standing experience with education as I am a lecturer at the University of Maastricht.
Thank you very much. If I can come across then to Robert.
So thank you, Tanya, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our global audience. My name is Robert Jato. I like to describe myself as the chief servant at the Chartered Institute of Bankers in Ghana, a role I've been doing for just about a year. Our mandate here is to really develop trusted bankers for the financial services space. I spent quite some time, 7 years at KPMG, leading strategy, working in different markets. But before then, I'd worked for Standard Chartered Bank, Lloyds Banking Group, a senior accountant in Edinburgh, but also Bank of Scotland and Halifax. So that's me.
Thank you very much. Thanks for bringing that to life. And Dr. Chin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ming Chin. So I'm a certified practicing accountant, and I'm also the regional head of learning and development at CIMB. So I have more than 18 years of experience in human capital development. So for those of you who are not so familiar with CIMB, we are one of the leading financial institutions headquartered in Malaysia and operating in various countries across ASEAN and beyond. So we are one of the region's largest financial service providers in ASEAN.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And finally, across to Martin.
Hi, everyone. Fantastic to be here. Thank you for having me here today. I started my first business, I think, 24 years ago, and have always really been involved in virtual and 3D technologies. And more recently, that has been a big focus on VR, virtual reality, and some other associated technologies. In 2020, following, I think, 3 years of R&D, UK government-funded R&D in partnership with the University of Glasgow, we launched a new business called Edify. And Edify focuses on the power of VR, virtual reality technology, to deliver training and learning experiences. And that has led us to a few interesting places, but in particular around envisaging environmental futures, something we were very much led to by our customers. We were engaging with a range of different customers, but there was this common theme of a keen interest in being able to use technology to explore what happens next if we make a certain set of decisions in different sectors, but in the finance sector seemed to be a real key area. So that's been our recent interaction with the Institute, and it's been fascinating so far, and we're learning as we go as well. So I'm looking forward to speaking to you all today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. And you know, you've mentioned the work that we're doing together. And we've just seen that fantastic video, which incidentally for everybody watching is available in the resources tab just on the Zoom screen there. So you can have a look at that again later. It is a teaser. It's a collaboration to really showcase a new way of learning that we're testing on a small scale over the next year in the Institute, working in the development of our Principles for Responsible Banking Academy, which is in itself a partnership with the United Nations Programme for Financial Investment and also GIZ. And this unique way of working is really helping to bring to life for bankers the journey to support them to work towards the objectives of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, Paris Agreement, and the Principles for Responsible Banking. So this was a bit of a teaser for us and something that, you know, we're just dipping our toe into. It's really, really new, Martin, but could you explain just for all of us, having just experienced that video, you know, what is the world of immersive learning and how is it impacting, or how are you seeing it impact the way in which we could positively influence those knowledge, skills and behaviours of bankers globally?
For sure, yeah. And it is a relatively new space, I guess, but the word immersive has many connotations, and in our context we mean very much humanly immersed in a virtual world that's around us that we can then explore and interact with. However, I think immersive learning of other kinds have certainly been around for a long time. In our space, I guess it's gaming technology that we're typically using. So the types of games that were born in the 90s and grew up in the 2000s, where multiple people can get together in the same space. Of course, in gaming, it's typically to race around in cars or be pretty violent of one form or another. That's the normal gaming mode, but that technology that allows lots of people to be in the same space at the same time, really in technology terms, it's been around for best part of 30 years now. And one of those key engines that drive games called Unreal Engine, it powers Fortnite and other things that some of you may be aware of. That technology now is available to all industries to use as a virtual platform where people can collaborate and do things. In our space, we were super interested. We completed some research, as we said, with University of Glasgow, looking at VR, and that almost always means wearing some goggles, wearing some glasses, which is a slightly odd human experience to do. But you wear the glasses and then you're in a virtual space and you can go anywhere, do anything. You can do very dangerous things. You can do impossible things like time travel, teleport. In other contexts, medical learning and the medical industry use it a lot to drop down inside the body. So you can drop down to nanoscale, or you can, I don't know, go to the Hadron Collider and watch a Higgs boson appear or something. So all of that kind of impossible stuff is now available to us all via these games engines, but in a virtual context. And for us, that then enables learning in a way that we couldn't have imagined, or maybe only imagined in sci-fi context that we couldn't have imagined previously, is now consumer grade technology. Meta are probably leading the way just now with their headset, and it's $300 or $400. So it's the cost of a console or something. Apple are appearing in this space with their hardware. So we will now see a real growth in this space in our everyday lives, in the consumer world, in our gaming world, and in our entertainment worlds, and bringing those technologies together, but to deliver what we want, which is this incredible learning opportunity. We are trying to be at the forefront of that, but certainly working with you guys and others are trying to explore those useful ways to do this. And it's very early, as you say. Most people are in exactly the same situation. You are trying something for the first time, exploring. We learn a lot, you learn a lot, I hope, and then we find a really great way to do something unique that hasn't been possible before.
Absolutely fascinating, and genuinely we've all learned so much through the process of working together on it. Ehab, if I could come across to you just to bring you in at this point. I mean, certainly from the sustainability development work and consultation, how can you see this really supporting those changing skills and behaviours we need for our bankers?
Thank you, Tonya, so much for having me today among your esteemed panelists. I was just thinking, and I'm very passionate about your new endeavor that you are going through right now with immersive education. And in fact, I'm also very happy with the enthusiasm that all the team that is working on the project have. And since our last conversation, I have been thinking about how these immersive technologies can help. In fact, I believe that first we need to do some sort of setting a narrative or a context where we are speaking in. The educational field, and I've been teaching for 25 years across different universities in the region, in the Middle East and globally. And I've been always wondering that the educational field has been for a long time very static. I mean, it's the same context that has been established since the beginning of mankind. One person standing at one side of the story, and the others are sitting on the other side, and we are. And the best revolution that has happened is that we may have a data show, for example, to be utilized during a physical learning experience. But in fact, the educational field has not developed as much as other fields that I was seeing around or teaching about around. This is one point. A second point, when we take this education or training and capacity buildings, particularly for banks, currently financial institutions in particular are witnessing a lot of changes. They need, in fact, to restructure and to debug the way they think, and they ought to think in the past. Integrating the concepts of sustainability and climate change brought a lot of challenges to expand the realm of the financial institutions from being only having a set of skills to have more of a knowledge, wide areas in different aspects. And definitely utilizing the old methodologies of teaching and education will not allow us, will not enable us to do this process in a quick manner or in an efficient manner. And that's where I believe that your intervention with bringing the two mega trends together, sustainability and climate change on one hand, and artificial intelligence or digital transformation in general on the other hand. The only, in this context, the only thing that I have in mind is that both worlds are still emerging. So we are dealing with two unstable phenomena. We are dealing with artificial intelligence that is still emerging and trying to bring applications into real life. And on the other hand, when we are talking about sustainability and climate change and responsible banking in particular, we are also talking about something that is still emerging and developing. So we are talking about both worlds that are very dynamic and that we need to bring together in order to provide a transformational, an efficient and effective transformational journey to the financial sector, which is very important for any transformation to take place across the Middle East. In this picture that I have in mind around it, I think the process of learning is the key message that I have at this stage, that we are both learning and we need to learn together, and we need to integrate the learnings from both sides in order to bring an efficient experience. And just when I was watching the video that was running now, I thought of my practices as an instructor or as a consultant who is teaching the financial institutions to transform, and how I can utilize all these tools and maybe develop more tools that would assist in doing this development. So at this point, I would like to put the conclusion quickly that we are talking about two worlds that are evolving together, and they will require a lot of partnerships with experienced people who are working on both sides in order to bring something that of value and that can be efficient in implementing a real transformation, in particular to the financial sector.
Thank you. That's a really pertinent point, and actually not one perhaps I'd considered, that they are both emerging. They're both still a lot of unknowns about both areas that we're describing today. And I guess as we start to think about that, and Robert, maybe I can bring you in here from your perspective from the Institute in Ghana. You know, when we consider these essential skills and competencies that we're asking banking professionals to grow so that they can really thrive in this new age of responsible banking, especially when we're thinking about those two emerging areas of sustainability and digital transformation. Now, how can learning technologists help to facilitate the acceleration in the development of these competencies through the learning that they provide. What's your take on it, Robert?
Thank you very much, Tanya. I think I was speaking to myself there. Maybe just again for our global audience, as I've indicated before, Ghana is on the west coast of Africa. Until 2019, we were one of the fastest growing economies in the world. But not anymore. But if you're looking for a tourist destination, definitely come to Ghana. With that said, I think I've done my national service for my country this morning. I can go directly and respond to your question. And I think your question is really very important. From the work that we do here at the Institute, and also just based on my own banking experience and consulting that I've done in different markets, there are a number of mega trends that we see, and I think we need to pay attention to. I'll just zoom in on maybe one or two. We all know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I've shared some resources or slides which are in the resources tab that you can just take a look at. The Maslow's hierarchy of needs that we know, that has been completely disrupted, right? Today, people think about Wi-Fi and battery power first before they think about their physical and physiological self-actualizing needs, right? And mobile phones are so integrated, and it's almost like every day part of our life is really gone if we don't have access to that small device called mobile phones. And there lies the key points around how we embed or accelerate learning, leveraging what we have as a tool in our hands. But the fundamental point, and I think that this is really important, is that the demographics that we are seeing and the digital acceleration that we are seeing also presents a scenario where we are in an environment of high perishability of knowledge, high perishability of knowledge. In other words, we really need to keep learning, and lifelong learning will be very, very important. And I have a formula, which is your rate of learning must always be greater than the rate of change, which is important, but also the rate of complexities that we face. So how technology, accelerate and build the competencies that bankers need? I think there are a number of things that we need to pay attention to. First of all, what are those skills? And what are those competencies? And I did some interactions in the past, maybe sometime this year, with a number of CEOs, a number of HR heads of banks in terms of what are the current skills gap and future skills that bankers need, and then organizational capabilities that the banks also need to be able to deliver value for shareholders. And quite a number of things came up: customer centricity, data and analytics, ESG, product innovation. And those are key skills that are in demand, particularly from the region where I sit, right? So here's what I think. Technology will be crucially important in accelerating that learning. And I see a handshake really between technology and humans. And the way I describe technology is like the relationship is one of a horse and a rider, right? If you put a horse down and a human being down to race, certainly the horse may do better. But if you put human beings on horses to ride, then you then get a certain acceleration. But that human being then needs to think about the ethical dimensions. And if we're thinking about technology as the horse and human beings are the bankers and riders, then we need those two to work together hand in hand. So I'll give you maybe 2 or 3 use cases in terms of the competencies. And let me just take the data and analytics capabilities that we sit on. Banks have significant volumes of data. My sense of data is data has potential value, maybe not actual value until you draw insight out of that. So for lending decisions, for example, ability to use data and the customer behavior based on what the customer is doing. will be key. And that comes handy if we take the data and analytics capabilities. If we were thinking about cross-selling opportunities or upselling opportunities from a relationship management perspective, that's where data even becomes more useful in terms of what are the product opportunities that you can sell or upsell. I think the last bit, again, just zooming in on data again, I was doing a piece of work in Nigeria for a bank, a commercial bank, that's more on the strategy side, consulting. And this was 2016, and the country was going through economic turbulence at the time, and the currency was depreciating very fast. Dollar was very, very scarce. And this bank didn't have access to dollar, and the pips, the spread on dollar was, just unbearable. So we took data and said, what are the trade corridors that your clients, your banking customers do business in? And which countries do they import goods from? And we discovered that there were countries like, Brazil, China, and maybe Europe. So the question there was, why are we looking for dollar? The guy buying from China actually can get the currency in the local currency. So why is the bank struggling to look for dollar, which is in scarce demand, to buy something from China or from Brazil? So that's the real use case. And we quickly discovered that there are better ways we can leverage data, even in trade, and really creating value for clients. So I think the landing point for me is really the need to build those competencies in the current stage and age where we are, but leveraging technology and considering the technology as a horse, but human beings then need to sit on that horse to make the ethical judgments in the daily businesses that we do. Thanks, Tanya.
Robert, thank you very much. And I've taken a couple of really great lines from you there. I mean, knowledge fade is something we all know, but high perishability of knowledge in the mobile and techie world that we have, in terms of making sure we got the rate of learning higher than the rate of change, absolutely. Can I come back, Ehab, just to you on that point? We were talking about those both emerging areas around sustainability and digital transformation. And Robert there's just brought to life something which I loved. For those of you who know me, I'm very into the equine world, Robert. You didn't know that, but that played beautifully into me. But having a horse and rider as an analogy, how does that fit, Ehab, from our previous chat there?
Yes, thank you so much, Robert. I'd like to complement what Robert was talking about, which is what kind of particular competencies we are required in the new world. The first competency I believe is very important is multidisciplinarity. The problems that the old systems has created a sort of silos, particularly in the banking system. So it has been more of a focus on skills rather than knowledges. The new world, as Robert mentioned, need a lot of knowledge in order to be facing the problem of multidisciplinarity with different issues. Can you imagine that today the banker needs to know a lot about chemistry, a lot about climate change, a lot about particular sectoral physical relationships with the real world we are dealing with. So accordingly, one of the competencies that I can see Edify can coordinate and play with is multidisciplinarity, collaboration, and coordination. I believe these will be the three success words of the coming worlds. Because for long, we have been talking about specialization and division of labor. And this was very correct at a certain stage while we were focusing on efficiency, where we were talking about profitability, and where we were talking about shareholder value. But today we are talking in the concept of sustainability about impact. We are talking about stakeholders' value. We are talking about a people dimension, a social dimension. We are talking about another dimension, which is an environmental dimension. This transformation in the realm of from profitability to impact will require also transformation in the competences that the financial sector employees are possessing and having. And let me put it for you in a very simple statement. One of my students who has become a CEO of a company, when I talked to him on sustainability, he told me, Ihab, you have only taught us profits. You have never talked about people or planets. What does this mean is that if we want really to impact or to do a transformation, we will have to work on competences, as you mentioned, and in particular, multidisciplinarity, collaboration, and coordination. This is on one hand. This is if we are talking about how immersive technologies and what kind of competencies immersive technologies can do. But there is a very beautiful other angle that I discovered during my research in the past days on your project, which is the relationship also between the financial institution and its clients. I believe that this the approach you are taking should not only be utilized in the relation between only the banking employees, how raising the competences and the awarenesses of the banking employees, but it rather can be taken to the realm of the bank and its stakeholders. And why this is important? Because it's now, as we mentioned, the role of the bank has changed, and the role of the bank, particularly with its customers, has changed. My customer is no more my customer. It's more of my partner in change. So we will partner with different sectors, and to do this, we can utilize also immersive technologies in order to reach a wider audience across different sectors and tell them how the sector can transform and how we as a financial institution can assist in the transformational process. So this is another pain I believe we can capitalize on. Final point here that may seem very naive, but in fact we are facing it on daily basis in the financial sector, is breaking silos. Breaking silos in knowledge. So you are no more a credit officer, you are a credit officer who should understand the risk. You should also understand the implications of procurement on human resources and across. And I don't think this could be done. And we are facing challenges when we are doing it in a physical context, because bringing different people on the table and speaking with them cost us huge amount of time, efforts, and knowledge particularities. And accordingly, I think immersive technology also can support in breaking these silos. So multidisciplinarity, collaboration, coordination, breaking silos, and utilizing the tool not only internally, but also rather in the wider context with different stakeholders.
Thank you very much. And I've written those down: multidisciplinary and collaboration and coordination. I'm not going to forget those. So thank you for that. I should just say at this point to everybody who's listening and online with us at the moment, please do feel free in the chat box to start popping in any questions that are occurring to you as we're going through. We will have good time towards the end of the panel discussion to actually open up to the floor for questions. So please do use the chat facility for that. But I'm just going to come back to something we've been talking about, which is all around, making sure we're linking knowledge and competencies and skills together. Particularly, that's something we're hearing very strongly through our qualifications, that we are making sure that we're being really clear around the link to the skills. So whether it's critical thinking or whatever other different skills and competencies that we're designing, to make sure that actually when we think about sustainability or we think about digital and AI in particular, that we're helping bankers demonstrate that through the learning and through the qualifications. And in fact, some of you will be aware that we're going to be launching a new digital and AI focused evolution in banking qualification early in 2024, which will help to do both of those things. And really, as we've designed that in consultation with the banking sector as clients and leading digital and AI experts, it really does help to bring to life this aspect of building knowledge as well as skills. More a little bit about that later. But I just want to move the conversation on in terms of, we're listening to lots of emerging technologies. We've seen some fantastic ways in which immersive learning can really support that, bring that emotive side to learning and actually engage the learner in a different way. But I'm sitting here thinking, actually, what about the challenges that the introduction and integration of this technology into learning brings when we're considering the wider global banking industry, and how does that challenge us? Ming-Ching, perhaps I could bring you in here at this point.
Yeah, so there are several key considerations to address before we introduce learning technology across the region or globally. So today I will talk about 4 of them. So number one is the learning styles and also preferences that could differ amongst diverse cultures and also age group. So I just want to give you an example. So will leaders of the older generation X in a less developed country who are in their 50s today, do you think they will prefer learning via VR over classroom training? Well, probably many of them would prefer classroom training, but it could possibly be because they have not experienced VR before. But if you would like this group of the workforce to change their learning styles or start to embrace more digital learning, it is not impossible because COVID has proven this to us as well. So in fact, in CIMB, before COVID, a lot of our mode of training or even meetings are all done face-to-face. So many of us only learned how to effectively use Zoom or WebEx during COVID itself. So if you want this group of people to change their learning styles, it is important that there is proper change management and education process as well if we want them to embrace more digital learning. So they need to know what it is, why it is important to change, what's in it for them, addressing their concerns if they have any, and perhaps to a certain extent, we may also need to teach them how to use these new technologies as well. So that's number one, right? Number two will be the language barrier. In CIMB, our training in the Indonesia and also Thailand offices are conducted in their local languages, whereas for the rest of the country, mainly it is done in English. So when we roll out any digital learning across the region, we always have to consider language translation, or the local L&D teams will have to source their own contents from their local vendors. The third area for consideration will be the infrastructure disparities. So it is given that the technological infra and also internet accessibility across the region must be in place before we implement the learning technology globally, failing which definitely the employees' learning experience will be impacted. So I just want to give you an example as well. So for us, even in Malaysia, many of our branch staff are not given laptops. So when we conducted virtual training during the pandemic, many of them ended up learning from their mobile, which is definitely not conducive. So imagine us having a new relationship manager and they go through a 3-week or 2-week learning journey over their mobile phone. So definitely it is really, really not conducive and they will not be able to retain much learning. So today, we definitely cater to their learning needs. We make sure that we have got bite-sized learning, which is mobile enabled. However, for training programs with longer duration, we definitely still opt for face-to-face learning for branch staff who do not have laptops. The last area for consideration will be the financial cost. It is expensive to implement and maintain learning technology on a global scale. So management will always ask, okay, how much does it cost? What is the take-up rate? And what is the ROI as well? So to me, it is always safer to take a pilot approach to find out if the pilot works. Then we strategize how we can increase the take-up rate, the lessons learned, and how can we make it better, right? Before we roll it out to a bigger scale. So in summary, before we launch any learning technology globally, we need to consider the 4 areas. One is learning style. Second is language barrier. Third is infrastructure disparity. And last but not least is the financial cost considerations.
Thank you very much, Ming Ching. And I'm going to come across to Martin, if I can, because I'm sure these are all fairly familiar areas that you've been hearing and listening to as you've been rolling out across the Edify space with immersive learning. And I just wonder whether you
recording in progress.
Whether you have responses to the conversation we've just had with Ming Ching around actually technology can cause some challenges, whether it's around the cost perspective, technological, the accessibility. How have you overcome and seen that in the work that you've done?
Yeah, thank you, Tanya, and thank you, everyone. I think I was feverishly writing notes as well, and I'd love to dive into about 10 of those topics. But I think to take your question and the points just raised, I think the several points I just agree with. I think COVID
brought a global forced digital transformation that wasn't probably entirely welcome, but we had to do it. And therefore, in our everyday lives, as well as our work lives, we adopted things like Zoom and Teams and all those technologies. And those that maybe had been, for all manner of reasons, not very digitally engaged, had to become digitally engaged pretty quickly. And I think another good point there about maybe laptops and other infrastructure not always being available, but mobile nearly ubiquitously available. Not everywhere, but I think in most work contexts, a mobile phone or some mobile device is available, then, or often a personal device used for that purpose. That was a key learning we actually discovered and adopted right at the beginning of our Edify journey. As we went to launch, we are the gamer kids and the tech kids. So, we're very comfortable with a lot of the technology, but we were acutely aware that many of our end users, the people that would actually engage in our approach to learning, may well not be those guys, us guys. And looking at that audience, a really gentle on-ramp to technology was crucial. So one of the key things, I'll maybe refer to something Ihab was talking about, the kind of traditional learning style of chalk and talk, someone standing, everyone else listening. That is what we are trying to get away from. We're trying to learn by doing, in our case, virtually doing, but learning by doing or learning by engaging and interacting that drives, and I think there's a lot of research, we've done a little ourselves, some has happened around us, and there's general research to prove the level of retention. And again, the perishability of knowledge is just something we do think about a lot. I love the phrase. I think the retention of knowledge through doing is way stronger. However, when doing is not always available, not very few people still have access to VR headsets. Even a kind of screen-based, interactive, gamified learning experience isn't available to everyone. But we did realize that we had to open the doors to or enable an engagement via mobile phones. So that was on one of the earliest learnings and things that we built, was the ability for an audience to join via mobile phone and to some extent interact. It's not truly virtually super immersive, but you are still in the world. I'm actually on my phone a second, but it won't work because you can't see my background, but you can pan your phone around to see the world around you, and you can have something of, and we learn a lot from the games world, because that really is where a lot of these formats have been explored a lot. And that delivers a level of interaction that I think gets across some of these barriers. The last point maybe to respond to, or to maybe just share a little bit of experience on, is that Gen X idea, that older generation, maybe slower to adopt technology idea. I think it is true, I think to some extent, but I think you can quickly see where things change rapidly. And my experience, I think I should check this year because I tell this story a lot. I think it's 2010, I think it's Christmas 2010, when something was launched. And then between Christmas 2010 and March 2011, 3 months, our delivery requirement on our business changed entirely in 3 months. Almost every big organization we worked for then were PC, Windows based. So everything we delivered was PC and Windows based. And by March the next year, 3 months later, certainly at C-suite board level, that generation, we were predominantly being asked to deliver on iPads. Now, 6 months ago, no one had ever seen an iPad. It launches in time for Christmas. All sorts of people in that generation get an iPad for the first time and very quickly realize they adopt the technology very, very quickly. And now in a work context, so they bring it from their personal lives, walk into the board, and at that level can probably tell the IT team, well, actually, I want this on my iPad. And that level on speed of adoption through consumer adoption into the enterprise world, I think we will continue to see happen in bursts. And it may be Apple again, because Apple's headset, VR virtual headset, is launched. It appears next year. I think it's a bigger challenge to strap some technology to your face. I mean, I think it's a whole new ballgame. And I don't think it will see anything like the speed of adoption that we saw with something like an iPad. However, I think it'll become less and less weird. And I think someone, I can't remember who mentioned earlier, that I think it was Dr. Ming, I think, said that if they haven't had that experience before, doing this for the first time, and that's definitely truly a barrier. But as it becomes more and more common in the rest of our lives, either with our family or in an entertainment context or with our friends, then I think it becomes much easier to adopt these sorts of technologies in the enterprise space. And just to say again, it was clear to us right at the beginning of our journey that everyone being in VR with all the technology available and all the infrastructure available was never going to be the case. So there are grades of engagement you can have that don't require all of the technology to be with you all of the time, right down to a mobile phone that you can engage via. So that's a kind of set of our experiences there.
Thank you very much. That hugely insightful from both of you there, and I'm sure we'll come back to that a little bit later in some of the questions. But I wanted to move us just into an area that, you know, we clearly heard from at the beginning from Victor around more the ethics side of deploying different technology, particularly AI, into some of our learning and development initiatives. And when we consider this hugely changing world of technology that we've been describing and the different ways in which we're expecting our professional bankers to respond and learn, what are some of these ethical considerations that we need to be really aware of when we're deploying such technology within the banking sector in those development initiatives? Robert, can I come to you to start with? Is this something you've come across as you've started to look at the changing way in which you're deploying and supporting technology and learning?
Yes, sure. Tanya, thank you. And just before I respond, I think Dr. Chin made a fundamental point, which I can relate with, particularly when it comes to access and cost to the technologies that, you know, and given where I sit, just yesterday, classic example, we were having the National Banking and Ethics Conference. We have people from the central bank, and then till end of the program, the national grid went off, and those participants who were online lost on the ending side. And then of those who were physically present, the conversation continued. So there's the access and there's the cost side. And that's something that Dr. Chin touched on. I thought I'd just really emphasize that. But on the ethics of the AIs and the technologies that we talk about, I think, let me give you an example. A few months ago, sometime in July or maybe June, we heard about ChatGPT, which is really something we're all familiar with by now. And we got introduced to it. It got first mentioned to us by a friend of mine who is based out of Oxford and has worked extensively in different markets. So we said, wow, we're interested in this. Can you organize some training for us? And so we scheduled the meeting for Tuesday, I think. And this conversation happened on Thursday into Friday. And I told my team, I got a few guys in the work environment from technology, from internal audit, people who don't have anything to do with right. And I said, we've heard about this ChatGPT. Can we download it and see what we can come up with, even before the Tuesday meeting with the professor? And guess what? Within the space of 2 days or 3, I think, we came out with a manual leveraging ChatGPT. And by the way, we are redesigning our curriculum for chartered bankers, right? And we've been trying to look at, you know, how do we get the right content, relevant content. So this ChatGPT came in handy. Now, on Tuesday, when we met the professor, my good friend, he was blown away by what we put together. Then we asked him to review what we did, right? And he came out with a number of things that we really didn't think about. ChatGPT gave us data, it gave us information, some of which is very relevant, but there are biases in what ChatGPT gave us, which we didn't realize. The other thing is, if you think about the data that underpin some of these AIs, the sometimes disproportionately distributed. It may come from advanced market like North America, Europe, but then that doesn't then take account of other markets, particularly if I speak for the African region. So whose data are we using? And I think that's an ethical conversation to have. And whose knowledge are we converting into a textbook? And how do we acknowledge that person? And I think that's an ethical, academic, dilemma that we need to address as well. The other thing is, and increasingly, we note that people get buried in the world of technology, immersive learning, and all that. There are skills that bankers need, and those skills are also social skills: ability to communicate, ability to network, ability to connect with others. And increasingly, we are feeling that those social skills are getting buried in the digital world. And it's something we need to really balance. If we're going to develop 360-degree bankers, then we need to balance those skills. How do you balance that? I think that's a key ethical conversational balance that we need to find as well. I think there's the isolation bit and the health-related things that maybe I'll need some clarity on as well. Increasingly, we get buried in our world of digital, and you could be, you could have 3 people sitting in one room, maybe around the dinner table, and everybody is on the phone. So we are communicating, but perhaps ignoring others, and whether that's a responsible thing to do in certain settings are things that we need to pay attention to. So I think in summary, there are ethical consideration, biases, discrimination, but also the potential of really using something that doesn't belong to you and not paying for it. I think the question I've asked is maybe first, is AI and technology desirable? I think it's important, it's desirable. Is there demand for it? Certainly, yes. Is it feasible? Can it be done? And we've seen others doing it, definitely. The next question is viability. So desirability, feasibility, and viability are key considerations that we all need to pay attention to in this ethical digital AI conversation world that we are in. Thank you, Tanya.
I could quickly respond just on the topic of the isolation and the digital thing. I've got 5 kids of the age that we do accidentally sit around the table. And I say we because I include my wife and I in that as well. We can quite easily sit accidentally on our screens in a social context, when in any other world we of course should be dealing with each other face to face, but we're all off in some other digital conversation or engagement, and that's not good. I mean, I think that's we're at a weird moment, I think, of mobile adoption, that this thing here is often the most enticing thing in any given moment. So I think that's weird and wrong, and I think we'll see that ebb and change. However, I think there's a huge, maybe often unappreciated upside of that kind of technology, is all of those people that don't have someone sitting in a room with them or don't have access to the people they would like to have access to. Those people who live somewhere not next to their loved ones or their colleagues. And COVID weirdly forced us all into that box. We all ended up sitting in these rooms by ourselves, probably after a few months of enjoying it, going slightly mad. And the digital connection that even just this technology, a call with a face and a thing, gave us all was pretty sustaining. I mean, we ran social events of all kinds. We got pretty bored of them after a while, but we tried so hard to use the technology in that way. And I honestly believe if you look at the social side of gaming, the social side of Fortnite, I mean, people literally just meet up and hang out virtually in Fortnite, and they run around, they don't blow stuff up and they don't shoot each other, they build things, and conferences are held. We've seen huge numbers of people attend music conferences, music events, hundreds of thousands of people paying for and experience. And some of the commercial upside of that level of engagement shows a genuine social engagement. Now, it's different. To some people, it's weird. Maybe to people like me, I've been doing it for 30 years. I've been online running around, socializing in one way or another. So I think there is an upside as well as the definite downside. So there's a balance here and a potential to be leveraged in, again, our enterprise learning experiential context, the social upside, as well as trying to defend against the kind of weird digital isolationism we get by being addicted to our screens. So I think there's a two-sided thing there.
Thank you, Martin. Really appreciate that view as well. I think we've got so many considerations as we're starting to explore in this short time that we're together today around how we really do bring together this whole idea of the emerging spaces of digital transformation and AI into the world of banking professionally. I just wanted a couple of things to do. Firstly, just to say, don't forget we've got the questions we're going to move into a little bit more now from our audience. So do, if you have any questions to ask, pop them in the Q&A. If we don't get opportunity to answer them today, because I know it's a fascinating subject, we will come back to you on them. And also, secondly, just to say there are, as we've mentioned already, resources in our tab on the Zoom there to have a look at. But I wanted to come back as we consider all these fascinating and great opportunities to us. Ming-Chin, within one of the questions that we've had sent through, we actually answered some of it already in terms of that accessibility. But there was a follow-up, which I just think is really, really a great question to ask, that, you know, where we have these challenges around landing the type of technology we've been talking about this morning, where does that leave the learner? You know, does that provide or give us some real challenges in gaps in learning around actually how we deploy or how we actually provide those learners that perhaps don't have the full technology to support them? And if that's the case, you know, how are you starting to see that working in terms of working around some of that?
We need to have different modes of training for employees with different learning styles, for different learning objectives, taking into consideration the lack of infrastructure in certain countries as well. So I've got a few things that we should take into consideration. So number one is, okay, so I will talk about the different modes first, right? So in CIMB, we have got bite-sized learning content. So we have got the virtual classroom training. Then we have got, you know, structured development journeys to build a holistic set of competencies. We have got executive education for talents, professional qualifications to build specialists. Then we always have those learning that happens on the job, right? The coaching, the mentoring, the sharing sessions by the senior leaders, stretch assignments, the job attachment. So there are many different modes of training. And in fact, I also see on the chat, there is a question by Zakaria, where she posted this question: new learning technology require infra and tools might not be available globally or expensive. So will this create learning gap in the future? And, you know, so to me, so having that different modes of training helps. Secondly is, to me, to CIMB, we always believe in having a personalized learning that supports our employees' career aspiration. So we strongly believe in asking our people managers to have individual development plan discussion with their staff. And during the discussion, they always take into consideration the learning beyond classroom, right? So we always have that 70-20-10, right? Yes, do you need that training, whether it's classroom, bite-sized learning, mobile learning, or do you need coaching? Do you need that stretch assignments, secondments, and whatnot? So both the people manager and employees need to realize that training is not the only form of development, right? So, and to make sure that that training is curated specifically for that individual, and the firm is really supporting them in, especially in fulfilling their career aspiration within the organization, so that personalized learning is important. Number two is learning in the flow of work. I think very often people use Google, or today use ChatGPT to solve the solutions that we have at the workplace. So the question is, how can we further enable learning in the flow of work? So to me, there are three tips, right? Number one is, you know, we need to incorporate that learning elements into the tools or the system that employees uses daily. So for example, when we train our sales leaders on how to use a sales management tool, we have to make sure that the tool is used at the workplace to ensure that there is 100% application on the job. So we also need to offer that bite-sized learning so that they can refer to it when they are in need. Just like how they used to Google or use ChatGPT, right? So they need to have that bite-sized learning available. So other than that is the on-the-job training, coaching. I think all those learning really on the job, or even mentoring as well, and the real-life feedback that they get from peers, from their supervisors, or even from their internal or external clients are important as well. So all these will further strengthen the learning in the flow of work. Of course, if I want to link everything to technology, I would say that technology is an enabler as well to enhance the application on the job. So as an L&D practitioner, when we develop or design the contents, we always want to make sure that we use real world simulation or case studies, they work on real life projects. All these will help make sure that there is learning or application on the job as well. And of course, it will be great if we have got VR, AR, or even AI to enhance the learning experiences, making learning more fun.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And what I'm taking from that is it's not about one or the other. It's about a really blended approach depending on the learner, depending on all the other different types of requirements that we've already talked about, whether it's technology, whether it's the cost, whether it's language. It's a real blended approach based on what's required. So thank you very much for that. We are going to take one question that we've got and that's carried through from earlier on, actually. So we're going to take the question because we've got about another 4 or 5 minutes before I start wrapping up. And this one's come through. It's a two-parter, so he is apologising. But we've talked about, actually, within the course of the morning, the language of apprenticeships through knowledge, skills and behaviours. And we're also talking and hearing about themes on collaboration, dynamic and applied learning. Does the panel think that these shifts are understood and appreciated by practitioners themselves, given the deeply embedded knowledge only training learning pathways that have perhaps carried more credibility in the past? I wonder, Ihab, could I come across to you just for a view on that for a couple of minutes, if I can?
Sure, Tanya. In fact, I can see that the discussion is really evolving, and one very important note that we can stand on right now, that we have to differentiate between training, immersive training and immersive learning. And what we are talking here is more about immersive learning with all kinds of objects and tools that can be utilized. And this is the beauty of immersive learning. Immersive learning can work as a chat room for employees to sit together and learn from each other at this context, or in a room where supervisors can coach others and the like. I'd like, if you allowed me, to come back to a very important question that to mix between two questions that you were raising concerning ethical backgrounds and the ethical dimensions that need to be taken into consideration also. Let me bring to your attention to a very beautiful document that has been developed by the digital world for the digital world, and it's called the Digital Declaration. And this beautiful document of digital declaration identified what kind of ethical behaviors and consideration that should be taken into consideration while developing in the AI world. And simply the document segmented that ethical considerations need to take into consideration 3 particular pillars. First, extended consumer trust in the digital age. And second, promises of inclusive growth and opportunities for all. And third is ensuring an environment that's fit for continued innovation and implementation. In fact, if you saw these 3 pillars, I think they encapsulate all of what we have said maybe in the past 10 minutes together. So we are talking about respectful handling of personal information. We are talking about protective delivering of experience in safe environment. We are talking about ensuring multi-stakeholder cooperation. in inclusive growth, we are talking about the possibility of connectivity and digital technologies and bridging the digital divide. We are talking about openness and fostering freedom of expression. We are talking on equal, bringing everyone the opportunity to learn, create. And finally, on the environmental fit for innovation, we are talking about dynamism, we are talking about constructive collaboration, and we are talking about sustainability and enabling environment for business. In fact, the digital part of the story has set the principles already that we can enhance our insight from what we would like to. But I would like to bring back this digital declaration perspective into our perspective, which is more or less a working environment, which is values and ethics. And this brings me back to a very important question. How can immersive learning also support values and ethics? Values and ethics are our compass when there is no manual or when there is no policy that we can work with. This is what we resort to in order to make right decisions, or correct decisions in the right direction. So I believe that the role of values and ethics needs to be integrated also in the immersive learning experiences in order to be more encapsulating a full immersive learning experience, or a full life learning experience. And this takes me to something that is very important when it comes to sustainability. Sustainability and climate change is not something about objectives, it's more of a value paradigm. And shifting it into being a value paradigm and utilizing tools that respect the values in this respect is something that is very important, because for me, I believe that the next revolution in sustainability, like the next revolution in AI, is that we are going to move it from being a sort of a pragmatic approach to do things, how to secure our planet, into a value approach, our value matrix that should be integrated within our kids, our people, and the next. And that's why I'm very happy with immersive learning. I would be very happy with immersive learning in schools also, because I believe it will carry out, it will have a huge potential in this respect. Thank you.
I think so. Thank you so much. You have what a fascinating end to what has been an incredible morning this morning. We are at the end, just a couple of minutes to go, and it leaves me to thank and extend a really sincere big thank you on behalf of the Institute to all of our panelists for participating in what's been a very lively and fascinating discussion. And I've personally written down so many great takeaways from the insight. You may remember that I mentioned the new digital and AI evolution in banking qualification. And as we finish today, we'd like to invite you just to listen to a short 45-second video about it. There will be a link again in the resources tab if you've got interest to enroll on it. But in the meantime, we hope you'll be joining us at Mansion House on the 7th of December for the finals of the Young Banker of the Year. The registration is now open. Otherwise, a big thank you for joining us today and staying really well engaged. We hope to see you all again next year. Thank you.